Before I begin my more structured and scripted thoughts, let me say that from the bottom of my being that this message has been brought to you by disdain and crafted with malignant and perpetual torpor. Apex used to be for me a crafted showcase and aptitude for the first-person genre and has come to represent for me the boiling frog that has become COVID-19 stalemate and an increasing anew for video games. Get you some! In this year of our Lord 2021, everything and anything goes. Be what you want, when you want. Turn your backroom hobby into a hustle and peddle one's wares and body. But understand the cost has been a total and flagrant merchandising and like.
I'm Cody, pronouns em, ers, zem, zers, or really any neo-pronouns that aren't ze, her, hers. White, transmasculine, femme, non-binary, temporarily mostly able-bodied, neurodivergent, obsessive-compulsive, chronically ill, culturally Jewish, Unitarian Universalist, non-monogamous, demi-low romantic, gray demi-bisexual, survivor of acute and complex trauma, millennial, and cat parent in mental health recovery.
Anything goes, because everyone and everything is for sale. This includes the institution and fledgling art form of digital media. The football titan, a quiet, lifelong Democrat and advocate for the civil rights movement, Vince Lombardi once remarked, "Everything has been done to strengthen the rights of the individual. At the same time, weaken the rights of the church, weaken the rights of the state, and weaken the rights of all authority." So it goes, and so it continues. The accelerant onto our already raging fires of economic disparity, increasingly bored consumerism, the severe repercussions, thinking ourselves special. You're still wondering then, how does this apply to Apex Legends or video games? We're getting bored and tired. You feel it. I feel it. We all feel it. We got everything we ever thought we wanted, and yet nothing satisfies.
Man is born, man lives, man dies, and it's all vanity.
And it's all vanity. Even Twitch, once a bastion for the hardcore, for the purist, has become a series of character actor sketches. Real world Austin.
Night-night, keep your butthole tight.
For the young, you need not apply. These are the lessons of 30 years. These are how games will change for you. But understand, you're being sold less. These are not because games were overall better in my heyday or my brothers or any former generation. On the contrary, games look better, play better, and are on the whole a better product. What's different is we paid our $50 or $60 for a minimum quality product. What now occurs for you, of the youth, is the price has become variable. So that like a razor blade, the entry seems cheap, but to shave your whole life adds up in blades. My message then to the young gamer of today, because the 35-year-old pissing himself over Fortnite skins has already succumbed to the virus.
I'm just gonna pray on my knees right now that Kevin comes out in 30 seconds. Kevin the Cube, please come into Fortnite. I love you, Daddy. Okay. Yes, I got mine. Hold on. It's Kevin. You so freaked your mind. Yes, it's Kevin.
Fight the good fight or lose the hobby. Games are going to kill themselves because hedonic adaptation, variable reinforcement, behavioral conditioning. And because you're not a rat in a cage, you can feel it. You can feel the maze around you. You can feel the probing from the digital eye of Sauron. Let me state it plainly. Apex Legends is the same old shit over and over again, but expects us to keep paying for it. But it's not just Apex. Apex is one of the better games in this whole cycle of abuse. The symptoms include clinging on to every new release as the one that will really be it. It'll be different this time, Bobby. Continually discovering dissatisfaction with other titles. Begrudgingly returning then to what you know. For the curious, brave forward. For the new age of 15-second Chinese Communist Party TikTok, I'll save you 30 minutes. I'm tired of being in the rat race. In the words of a great man, All our lives we sweat and save, building for a shallow grave. There must be something else to say, some way to defend this place. But alas, quotation ends, story over. I'm tired of sweating and saving on these hobby games for a shallow reward, for a shallow feeling, for a shallow grave. There isn't much for us of the mid-age distinction in these live service games. Once a story I bought into at 20 years old, at 30 becomes, I don't have the time to wait 3 years for a game to get good. The honeymoon, for me at least, is over. I'd prefer sequels, I'd prefer great gameplay and a story. Anymore, I prefer simple over arcane, a fixed price point over floating, deep gameplay over needlessly busy. Perhaps in the age of stockholder video games, an industry going the route of all the American industry, offshore and value in stock rather than product and research. After 3 years, I can say with confidence that I conclude Apex never really changes. Let me say some good things, some fine things about Apex Legends. Apex Legends is a testament to the old story about the tortoise and the hare. While Fortnite soared to dizzying peaks, higher than any game has ever been to date, single-handedly created the multi-millionaire streamer class, took parents from go outside and play to where we droppin', son. And as its engine of popularity was just backfiring as if a cartoon airplane sputtering at the final moment, their CEO decided to use all their power and might to have both Epic and Apple uselessly air dirty laundry and hurt Fortnite as a result. Meanwhile, as we sit, Ninja has gone from Fortnite and Twitch's premier star to just another big streamer on the Apex grind. Apex is arguably passed out and beyond the shadow of the colossus in the BR industry that was Fortnite, but then so did Fortnite pass PUBG, and so did PUBG pass H1Z1, and in my opinion, this entire genre, for all its merit that needs taken forward, has moved at a methamphetamine pace of rise and fall, as if replicating the gameplay they produce. What do we do at the crossroads of games and genres? Just wait until the next big thing? No. But in a larger sense, do we continue to play the same game, relishing in its hamster wheel approach? So many reps on our hands that our tired minds can automate our responses, or approach new games, arguably be the better for it, but have to go through the tedium of learning to love the new. There's a middle somewhere, but I've never really been able to find it. Really, that's a generational question defined by a generation leap. My brother's generation, less than a decade my senior, would easily say just move on to the next game. They were enriched by a wide swath of releases. Sure, only 1 or 2 games available a year just because of middle-class family budgets, but multiple replays of those games, of well-crafted PvE or couch PvP experiences. My generation, that short bridge with my first console, the Xbox, yes, the OG black box when Bill Gates was Jeff Bezos, that black box in which was Sega's dying breath, giving us all the inheritance money onto Microsoft to continue on the struggle against Japan's giants. That black box, which was in so many ways cutting edge and trend making, live matchmaking, DirectX infrastructure, a built-in hard drive. The original Xbox really has stood the test of time, and its exploitability has given it a lasting appeal and enduring community of tinkerers, hackers, modders, and creators. Yet, in some ways, we have the Xbox to thank for inscrutable DRM, the rise of the live service hobby game on console, and arguably the PC market following consoles with the transition from big box PC games, yes, I'm that old, to the digital marketplace with companies like Steam and Epic. Everyone aiding, abetting, and dogpiling onto the death of physical media, both pro and con. Certainly, I'm old enough to remember having more original Xbox games than I've owned in the totality of the Xbox Series X, 360, and Xbox One. And what does any of that have to do with Apex Legends? And no, it's not just another diatribe against microtransactions and loot boxes. Still f those things. It's not just that the market has changed, but that our paradigm as gamers has been forced to change as well, and that adjustment period is difficult and nearly insurmountable for the generations of old. But what's troubling, what is most malicious, is that for the generation coming up, and I see it in my nephew, this is their normal. This is all they know. They will not protest this change. They will not argue against it. It's all they've ever known. And so, this is rapidly becoming our new normal. I am not that good at Apex. My signature achievements are getting win badges and 2K badges with each legend as of the writing of this video. I hit Diamond, but as a solo, my ranked experience has been frustrating, to say the least. I've bounced from a 1.7 to a 1.5 KD and back again multiple times and finally settled into a constipated comfortable of 1.6. I streamed it every bit of 300 some plus hours, and I've hit 100 subscribers one very generous night, but I think that had little to do with Apex. And I've completed every season but season 2. I won't be completing this season because I'm done, and I'm glad of it. I bought a $10 coin pack to buy season 1, then used that money to buy every season thereafter. I bought the Lifeline edition and Bloodhound editions at a steep discount of $10. Well worth just for their novelty factor. I'd say all in all, I've probably spent $60 on the game. And it's with the there's, thus, and that's the first of 2 questions in regards to Apex must be asked. Is Apex worth $60? And that is a question that always brings me back to one game, one ignominious and infamous game that for whatever reason sticks out like a sore thumb on the history of gaming, called Brink. Besides Brink's issues at launch, one of the primary faults reviewers and players had with the game at the time is that it was multiplayer only. Yes, it is only a brief interlude back in time to return to a place where if a game launched without both a PvE and a PvP component, it was incomplete, unless it was like Oblivion, Skyrim, or Mass Effect and had a large, encompassing, well-crafted PvE to it. Multiplayer-only games were not seen as full-price releases. Now, to be fair to Apex, it's not $60, but still, that's worth noting. So the campaign was PvP akin to Titanfall. Titanfall displays the shift in paradigm, because by this point in the 6th generation of consoles, an age of online shooters and King COD, being multiplayer only wasn't seen as near of a hindrance. Both critically and financially, a game was to have a PvE mechanic and a PvP mechanic to ship and earn a consumer $60. The amount of change undergone on this one fundamental variable as it applies to market cap, that is the upper limit consumers are willing to pay for any good without forfeiting it altogether, is ludicrous and far exceeds all change seen since the Nintendo Family Entertainment System. Nintendo cemented the seal of quality to make up for a cynical consumer market. Mom and Dad did not believe a home gaming system was worth the Christmas indulgence. This new rule of $60 games that provide more and more value to the consumer and gamer, often enforced by overlord publishers keeping the prices at $50 to $60 not to undercut each other and cause confusion, was the rule of the land for 30 years. Then, in a historical blink of the eye, and I can point to Destiny, in my opinion, as the first real marriage of persistent online content on console, the acknowledgement, developers and publishers, that they could get more money out of a title post-purchase than what the market cap suggested. Games like Phantasy Star Online for Dreamcast, Force Armor for Oblivion, these showed the crack in the door, but didn't open the door wide open until we get to Fortnite. And then this has become now our de facto new standard, and we've only received one positive as a result, and that is a reputation for some developers of being resolute with their games post-launch. Microsoft has a good reputation in this regard. Ubisoft has a good reputation in this regard. We've sacrificed a lot of bad for a little bit of good from a consumer's perspective. In fact, no one has been hurt more by this than the impoverished gamer, the rural player, who has been culled from the equation just by their isolation in a hobby that is meant to be inclusive. And in allowing our hobby to become locked behind our new 6th Sense internet, we didn't receive anything in kind. In fact, we agreed, in so doing, to pay more for less. Games take twice as long to make, but they come out half as good. We're to stay patiently through the hard years to get to the potential nectar after years of updates. Sometimes it works out. State of Decay 2 would be an example, but the cost is measured in years. So, is Apex worth $60? No. Our quantified market cap has been diluted, destroyed, made subjective and ambiguous. While this has allowed far more independence for developers from publishers, and we've all been blessed by the indie game market, one can only imagine if many of these creative and innovative titles from the indie game developers were given AAA budgets, the entire industry would be much better for it, and you wouldn't have people like myself complaining over the internet. Alas, we've also been able to see, though, that when these are given AAA budgets and the publishers get involved, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. The old sins of video game crashhood have reared their ugly head as a result, though. Consumer confusion of the market. What's the value of a game? Have you guys seen the Walmart game shelves lately? Mostly barren, prices are all over the place. There's no more discovery of new or interesting titles. And you understand that game prices are so up and down that plus you literally aren't even, these areas aren't even serviced anymore from my experience. You can't find the employee ever to open the little gate, which was of course a magical experience as a child to look at all the new game releases. That's where they were. That was the only place to see that there were a bunch of new stories available, to have the Walmart employee go over there with the lock and key, open it up, and bring you a cellophane green plastic rectangle. But variable price models on top of the death of physical media all scares the crap out of me, because whether it works out for good or ill, the overall non-evaporation outright of physical media means that the big boys, Microsoft, Sony, etc., are loving the change to the digital format. $60 for a physical game, but $60 also for the digital game. We're getting massive markups. Now physical media sits on the shelves and is often steeply discounted just to get rid of the damn things. You can go to Five Below if you want to find Battleborn, for instance. Let's be clear. Apex is not worth $60 because it's skins and shooting stuff. Is it one of the most uniquely polished shooters in existence? Yeah, it really is. But you spend most of your time just running around the map, so you don't get to see that combination of the ability to reverse a firefight, 5 minutes to learn, the lifetime to master, emphasis put on precision aiming and use of cover. You only see that in 10-second bursts. So let's be real here. By the old standard, only 10 years ago, it's a tech demo. My Xbox magazine or Nintendo Power Xbox magazine would always send me these like little discs, and you'd have a demo on there. Crackdown had like a 10-hour demo. You could just play over and over and over again, as many times as you wanted. That has arguably more content than Apex Legends does. There's no deeper progression system. There's a story, but it's like Overwatch. It's this very tertiary thing that you would never even notice unless you really went looking for it. And it has grown in that way, but when you boil it down to its most fundamental level, it's a tech demo. It's a tech demo for a very well-made shooter. Now, I can't say the same about Titanfall. Titanfall has that great campaign and story on top of excellent multiplayer that's just as good as Apex. Apex is actually, in many ways, a reduction. I'll be fair, a positive reduction, but still. And of course, anybody will tell me, and this is fair, the game's free. It's not asking to be a $60 game, is it? No. And in a larger sense, it's our fault for voting with our wallet then. That games like Apex often make far more money in their lifetime than, say, Fallout 2 or even New Vegas or 3 in the long run by nickel and diming the transactions so you never really feel the bleeding. It's just like mobile games. Oh, it's $1. Oh, it's $5. I've probably spent easy $100 on Pokemon Go. Even though I'm aware of what it's doing, it's so much easier when it says, oh, it's $1, oh, it's $5. It's like fast food. It just keeps adding up. So it's a tech demo, and yeah, it's free, but people will pay more than $60 for it in the long run. And that's where it becomes important to say it is not worth $60. And it means that we have to accept that for every convenience that we've gained in this industry and in this hobby, we've allowed it at the expense of ownership. We have fundamentally lost certain aspects of game design, like developers thinking about shelf life, or developers thinking about endgame, post-game, meta progression. How do I give my consumer as much value as I can for their $60? Because at least we had a price point. That's what was so important about market cap, even though it was designated by the publishers. It's an industry protection tool, yes, but it also creates a minimum value a product has to attain. When we launch games for free, because games are by and large underpriced, and I would prefer a world in this industry where games are $70, let's say, or $30 to $40 for AA titles, but come with that perception that there's no more nickel and diming me. There's no microtransaction store. And by the way, that makes much better games. One of the reasons State of Decay 2 is so good as a game right now is because you can just play it. And I say that all the time, you can just play it. What does that mean? It means that I'm never thinking in the back of my mind, oh, there's a cap here, or I got to think about the daily limit there, or, well, I can't really do that because I got to pay 700 dead tokens to get that skin, and there's all these little itty-bitty things that add up. I can play it offline if I want. I got a disc, and I've got all the updates on my hard drive, and when I go into a map, the sandbox is just there. There's no DRM. You can go do your bounties. That's the way it should be. That allows a game developer to actually utilize game design, to think about what makes the best experience for the player, what tells my story in the best way, what is my story, what are my mechanics, what kind of game am I trying to make? Not like, say, Halo Infinite right now. How do I pigeonhole or funnel the player into as many microtransactions as possible? Apex is not the most nefarious when it comes to microtransactions. It's just another symptom of this ugly beast that is, on some level, games just being undervalued. They've been undervalued, and as a result, somehow we pay more for them. So anyway, the answer anymore is always we can patch it. So you don't got to think about shelf life. You don't got to think about your game coming out like Borderlands 2 and being complete, and Borderlands 1, Halo 1, whatever. We can keep going back. A product that if someone who doesn't have the internet buys that game disc, they're going to be satisfied with what they have and continue to trust buying video games. Because ultimately what the industry is going to have to face in the post-COVID world that it will come, people don't need games. They don't feed you. They don't clothe you. They don't provide you health when you're sick. They don't nurture you. Yes, they're an excellent outlet for entertainment, for competition, for bonding with the family. They're a great medium to tell stories, but we don't fundamentally need them. They're a boon, to be sure, but in terms of time and of money, they have become a very costly one, and in some cases, we're ignorant of just how high the cost really is. These games are on subscription services. Then the next question, the final question. If it's not worth your money, is it worth your time? Any gamer over 25 years old has played some small role in the shift that we are undergoing. We can blame the publishers, we can blame certain developers, we can blame big box stores or digital marketplaces, and while they share some guilt and have certainly leaned into and created every opportunity for this world of subscription games and microtransactions to become our new normal of give away the game, sell them the loot boxes, for their part, they primarily just sold the data. They didn't play games much or really at all themselves. They worked 50 hours in an office making more money than most of us will ever see, and they just plotted the business decisions on the chart. And at every turn, we seemed willing to accept that the temperature in the pot had gone up another half a degree. Business decisions that have cemented 20 or even 10 years ago would have meant a world without Jet Set Radio Future, Halo Combat Evolved, easy, but likely would have still delivered World of Warcraft. And even then, WoW was refined and robust. That hasn't become the Western market norm of point and shoot. But I must remember that weak writing is writing, and I said I wouldn't diatribe. But it's hard not to because it allows for passing the buck. I harangue, but I played Apex for 3 years. A great portion of those years were spent in the toxic social media world of external validation and the American soul-poisoning toxin called keeping up with the Joneses. A greater portion spent immersed and impressed by Apex's tactical quality as a shooter and fidelity to control, the pioneering vision of fluidity of movement. Nearly everything is climbable. The creativity of vantage points is largely unmatched by any other shooter. And all the while waiting anxiously for 3 years for Apex to really finally hit its stride all the way though. And this has not happened. Apex's failure to execute on opportunity has been its Achilles heel since launch. Yes, I'm saying this and writing these words as Apex has hit its most popular point ever, but to me, its lowest ebb in terms of gameplay. Apex has refined the experience. Yes, executions to armor fill, weapon attachments, the loot pool, survival items. There's been a wide range of limited time modes that have acted as experiments, that gathered data, and they've led directly long-term quality of improvements for the game. This polish took 3 years though. 3 years of player peaks and valleys through the same old battle pass, through the same cursory and minimally sufficient progression and statistical systems. And since it's a free-to-play game, those of us that weren't spending any money on it were being totally and completely ignored. Apex lives up to the Napoleon Bonaparte saying, "A soldier will fight long and hard for a bit of colored ribbon," except that it fails to finish the thought. But the general understands that even more men will die for a man who remembered their names as he does theirs. When he inspects them, he walks among them, eats with them, calls by their names and asks about wives, children, girlfriends, hometowns. All anyone ever wants is to be recognized and remembered. Neither is possible without the other. Apex makes me feel like a point of data in the machine. The failure of Apex is it just doesn't care about the player outside being a data point. Because it is nothing but a tech demo for pointy shoot, you will never realize any real progression. The game will never give you positive feedback. You will always be thrust into increasingly difficult lobbies by increasingly sweaty 16 and 14-year-old boys. You will increasingly be destroyed by these children, and all of your free time will evaporate, and you will question every night where your time went. But worse, more encompassing, larger to the point, is that the water is boiling. It is 30 seconds to midnight for this industry. So long as games continually make the player feel like a data point, as the dissatisfaction and consumer trust continues to erode, we will be faced with a precipice unseen since the video game crash. It still remains difficult to answer the question, is Apex worth your time? Because we have to understand how time is measured differently by everyone. If the question is Apex worth your time as a way to waste it? Of course. But is Apex worth your time in terms of a quality experience that can be measured in tangible growth as a person or as a player, gives you reliably positive social interactions that grows the quality of digital media as a whole? Absolutely not. It's a tech demo for Shooty Point. And I will say, as we conclude, that it is worth remembering, as I stated only a moment ago, that Apex does not care about the player outside of being data points, and especially data points in terms of population. Apex is on autopilot at this point. The developers have made the mistake of getting on Reddit and then made the bigger mistake of being argumentative. Now, they're people. They feel, and this is their game. It's not that, it's that the truth often comes out. Fan service or consumer advocacy has only been allowed when a game reaches lows, record-breaking lows, near-death lows. And when the game reaches new highs, they quickly will revert back to the old behavior. This is a game that has consistently had $70 loot boxes. And after some fuss, and after some apologies, we're sorry, we all just accepted it. It became the new normal. This is a game that purposefully preys on whales with two $300 heirloom items, but that from a strictly gameplay point of view has neither changed nor improved little over the last couple years. As the legend pool has slowly grown, the ability for the developers to hone the balance has frayed almost entirely. Their underlying goal has been to get usage rates about the same per legend, but as Destiny has dealt with PvEVP challenges with balance, Apex has with Ranked. Ranked, by its weighing survival over action, ushered in an age of nerfing usage rates for generally inferior legends to suit the needs of the few. This has been the year for Apex of being in a vicious cycle of often not seeing the map for the territory by terminally looking at data over player reactions and feelings. An admittedly difficult thing to do as the game, like many other online titles, has found a sudden bump in popularity, or, as of Season 11, become the new it thing. Apex is suffering the fate of the current American economy. Huge demand, little production or supply to meet the demand. Their answer has been to go to the simple and yet reliable tool used by all developers anywhere that proclaim to care about balance, release a new item, DLC, or cosmetic around one legend, and hideously buff that legend out of proportion and see a corresponding bump in sales for said items. Characters like Bangalore, Watson, Crypto have been relegated to periphery to-dos. Characters like Revenant are nerfed hard because of blips of data, rather than seeing the whole that was Revenant was strong given a set of conditions. They ignore player feedback almost entirely, from my perspective. As a result, they're making the often flagrant but easy to make mistake developers do of whack-a-mole. And as they've played whack-a-mole, they've made the bizarre decision that their new focus would be on arenas, the big content of the quarterly seasons. No, we didn't get any new progression systems, we didn't get any new story content, which they once upon a time experimented with. No, they dropped a 3v3 arena system that they put almost all of their effort into for the last year. Arenas has only taken Apex's flagging health, questionable balance decisions, and increasingly repetitive gameplay. I've come to loathe the season passes in their less is more approach once I started to see how finely they've honed the calculus of to win, a player must log in nigh every day. Failure to do so is punished with money. A sinister mark of behavioral manipulation that has further enforced my knowing that I need to quit, but not. It's like a cigarette. And to state it bluntly, these are only the thoughts of the moment, which have seemingly regurgitated themselves with each season, and worse, with each new game. all the way to our once magnificent Halo has been corrupted. Until the time comes to move from the blunt to the plain, Outer Worlds is a better game than Apex Legends. That's as simply as I can state it. It has a story. It left me feeling good afterward. I didn't feel like I need to log in every day. I didn't feel like I needed to make a microtransaction. I didn't have to buy a skin. It told me a complete story. It was fun to play. It was a good game. I'd gladly spend $60 on it again. I felt better for playing it. Yeah, it took me time, but I didn't feel like that time was wasted. And you may say that came out of nowhere. You're just salty and frustrated from losing. But to me, feeling good about the time you spent is the entire point of entertainment. Improving people's lives through storytelling, elucidating, empathizing, expressing compassion is the point of entertainment. This new expression of games as neuroscience hack to funnel microtransactions as product and brand over entertainment, story, art form. And by the way, they'll pay a price for this. We look back on the games of old with such nostalgia because they were good. We go back and we watch old movies. We go back and we watch The Godfather, not because they're our product, not because they sold us on something, but because they're genuinely good. You go and you watch Scarface again because it's genuinely a good movie. They have more sticking power. And as a result, these titles actually make more money in the long run. The Witcher 3 has consistently had great sales. So, let me finish. Yeah, stock prices are up. Yippee! So are Enron's. But consumer satisfaction is down. Consumer trust is down. These are not the faces of joy we see on our most popular streamers despite their wealth. What starts as a beautiful way, an innovative way, a new way to experience a story degrades as we grow whiskers and sense that the cheese has grown moldy. Apex gets a 2 out of 3.
But Phil's about to find out. He's not just stuck in Puxatawney.
Will you be checking out today, Mr. Connors?
Chance of departure today, 100%.
He's stuck
It's Groundhog Day!
in Groundhog Day.
I'm reliving the same day over